What horror movie type situation have you been in? Came home from football practice one afternoon to find front door slightly ajar, blood covering the kitchen counters, phone off the receiver, corded home phone. Imagine that, bloody footprints leading to the garage and a blood-covered knife lying on the kitchen floor. Sister had been cutting sausage that wasn't full thawed and ended up severing an artery in her left hand/thumb. Mom had came home and immediately rushed her to the hospital without time to clean up or make the house less murder. Why? In 1990, I was 5 years old. A couple of friends down the street and I would ride bikes near a park with a wooded area that had some trails from time to time. I was at their house playing around in their yard when they jumped on their bikes and asked if I wanted to go to the park. I said I had to ask my parents if it was alright for me to go, but my parents denied me permission to go since it was getting to be later in the afternoon. I imagine I was upset, but whatever, I just went and played Nintendo or whatever. Anyways, the two boys went missing, and I can't remember how long they were missing for, but after a search effort they were both found in the woods dead, nude and strangled with their own shoelaces. It's not something you fully understand when you are told as a 5-year-old. I know I had to talk to the cops about it at one point, but I don't really remember any of the details. Now that I'm older, it creeps me out. Walking home from the bars one night, I noticed a man walking not too far behind me. It's a fairly highly populated area, so I didn't think much of it until I turned into the private lane that led to my apartment and he followed. I got spooked and started running, and he did too. Around the corner of the house, up the stairs, and across the patio he followed me. I made it into the house just a moment before he did, slammed the door, and threw the deadbolt. A second later he was up against the door. He smiled at me through the glass, then simply turned and walked away. My aunt lives on one of the Canadian Gulf Islands. Very small, everyone knows everyone kind of thing. My sister went for a run in the forest one day and came across an abandoned house. She came back to tell us about it, and my aunt had no idea it was there, which is strange for such a small island. So we all went back together to check it out. There was a small amount of dirty kitchenware inside, and chains hanging from the ceiling. Yeah, chains hanging from the ceiling. The whole time we are saying to ourselves, we are the idiots who wander into a murder house in the middle of the forest, while the movie audience is telling us to get the hell out. Anyway, nothing happened. We are still alive. Haven't been back there since. My sister and I were home alone. We were in high school, so aged 15 to 17. We had a few friends over for drinks one weekend and heard people outside our house. Having only 6 people in the house, all young and drinking, we tried to ignore it. Power goes out. This was before we all had mobile phones. A gang was under our house and took what is known as the electricity switch. We couldn't call police. We couldn't do anything. We were in a small town too. Luckily we saw them disperse. Someone ran up the road to the neighbors to call for help. This small town gave me many scary stories. My cousin and I were 17 years old. My parents went away for the weekend and left the house to us. We had left the house for a while and came back to feed my dog and have dinner. My parents gave me the garage door clicker to use while they were gone, so I put it in my coat pocket and forgot about it and continued to use my keys for the front door to get inside. After my cousin and I were back at my house at night, we were watching TV. I was too lazy to hang my coat up, so I just left it on the couch next to me. At some point, I leaned on it, causing the garage door to open. We started screaming. My dog started barking. We didn't know what was going on. We thought someone was watching us and was planning to kill us, much like Scream. The sad thing was, it took me way too long to realize why the door opened. Freshman year of college, and I was really drunk at a party. This guy comes up to me and asks if I want to go to his apartment and meet his baby bunny. Drunk me fucking loves baby bunnies, so I decided to go. It was like a 20-minute walk through a really sketchy neighborhood, over a dark, decrepit bridge. Sirens are blasting somewhere in the near distance. We make it to his old, shadowy building, walk down a long narrow hall to his door, and turns out he has a fluffy baby bunny named Edition. We hung out, and I played with his literal bunny for like an hour before going back to my dorm. I'm not proud of this, and it really taught me a lesson in self-protection and safety. I'm incredibly lucky I wasn't raped and or murdered. TL. Dr. Guy lured me to his apartment with the promise of a bunny. Actually had a bunny. Growing up in a 150-year-old farmhouse, I have seen/heard many a thing. Point one that comes to mind was one night when I was but a lad. I awoke to the sound of the doorknob to my room jiggling as if someone was trying to make their way in. In a classic horror movie move, I went to the window of said door to try and see if it was my sister's. I pulled it back to see darkness, and then the doorknob stopped, and I shit my pants. I was 7 at the time, living in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and it was winter. There was snow on the ground. I couldn't sleep and was watching the snow fall outside when I saw a man walk across our backyard and climb into my tree fort. At this point I totally lost it and ran into my parents' room and told them what was happening, and they told me I imagined it, which made me more scared. And eventually my dad looked outside for me and didn't see anyone. He said he looked in the fort, but he later told me he didn't actually. Needless to say, I slept in there. The next morning a man wanted for armed robbery and murder was found by our neighbors, passed out in their garage with heavy drugs, a gun, and knives. Oh, and there was footsteps going across yard into fort and across yard toward neighbor's house. I was 11 years old when we moved to a new house where I didn't know anyone around. Home from school, I got into the elevator and the tall middle-aged man hurried and got in after me right before the doors shut. As a city girl, I could have been wise, gotten out and waited for the next one, but didn't think of it at the time. So I press my 13th floor. We lived in Moscow. The doors close and the elevator takes off. I stare at the man, and he doesn't press any other button. My heart begins to race. The elevator ride feels like eternity. Finally it's my floor. The doors start to open. I step out and mumble goodbye. The man replies with not yet. At that point, I freeze and my heart is beating so fast it feels like it's about to explode. He opens the door that leads to the area before my apartment and turns left towards the other door. Oleg was our neighbor who we would have over 40 many times in the upcoming years. Pretty sure that he was intentionally freaking me out, and it sure worked well. This may be a little late to post, but why not? About 2 years ago I was at home by myself, and I was tired as hell, so I decided to go to bed early, around 8 or 9ish. Anyways, I wake up about an hour later with an elderly man on top of me looking at me with the most insane eyes I've ever seen before. He starts whispering, "Don't make a sound, sweetie. Daddy won't take very long." Naturally I start screaming my fucking head off, and the guy starts tearing my clothes off of me. I'm not very big, and he was pinning me to the bed with ease. Luckily my 6'3", 205 pounds MMA fighter boyfriend had gotten home and heard my scream from downstairs. He was at the door in an instant, and within about 5 to 10 seconds my assailant was lying on our bedroom floor unconscious with a broken nose and several teeth missing. Week-long backpacking trip in the Smoky Mountains, followed by unknown person/thing for the better part of 3 days. Walked around our campsite at night, walked higher on the mountainside during the day. Never saw it, only heard it walking through the woods, breaking branches, crushing dead leaves. By the 3rd night I was in a state, exhausted, and tripping balls from lack of sleep. Worst/best trip ever. Never been so scared, yet also never been that alive and curious to see/encounter what/whoever was out there. Back in the 60s, my dad and a friend of his were supposed to hang out with their buddy Steve. My dad and his friend ended up with dates last minute, so they cancelled on Steve. So having been ditched by my dad and his friend, Steve ends up out for a drive that night and picks up a hitchhiker. The hitchhiker was the caretaker of a mansion that was nearby and just needed a lift home. Steve brought the hitchhiker home, and as he was backing out the driveway the Manson family pulled in and killed him along with everyone inside the house. So the mystery guy in the Tate family's driveway, Stephen Parent, was my dad's high school buddy. My dad would have been with him too if he wasn't too busy chasing tail. Every time I'm the only black guy in my group of friends, and we do anything mildly sketchy, I call that a horror movie situation. Thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe.